Hi patrons, for this month I decided to do an arrangement of A Foggy Day, which of course is a fairly well-known standard, and I'm working on that with another patron right now, so it seemed sort of a good thing to just go over that one. It is a really nice melody to work with, even if the form is a bit longer. It kind of has like extra, 2 bars in the form. But I don't really think about it like that because I just think about the melody when I'm playing it, so then you don't have to count bars. I added an intro to it as well, just which I'm also using as an outro, which I guess I do most of the time. Also just because that kind of makes it a more complete piece of music. The intro's actually surprisingly simple because I'm just playing sort of diatonic voicings, shell voicings really up and down the scale, and then adding a little bit of rhythm by using sort of a bass and chord split up. So really fairly simple, just doing this and then doing that twice, and then going into the theme. So the melody, the way I'm playing it here is that I'm trying to sort of state the harmony, but also still get the melody across. That's of course already the melody. So the C is the first melody note. And here also on the A half diminished, so I chose to harmonize this in different ways in the different parts of the form, also just to show some different options here. I think this one is the most smooth one in the key, so to turn that into like an A half diminished and then to D7. And whenever you have these long notes, so because there are quite a lot of long notes in this melody, then that gives you room to just add some stuff with the chords, even like I'm doing here, a little bass fill down to the G. And then making sort of the transition. That's another thing that this song I think demonstrates really well. There are a lot of repeated notes also, so you have like, right, so there's a lot of repeating the same note, but then in a way that makes it boring, but also that gives you the option to color those in different ways. And here I'm doing it like this, so I'm sort of adding like a line cliche to the G minor that takes me down to that C713. And then again, long note, so some bass movement to this F major 7. Here that's not the melody, so I'm skipping up to a different voicing for the melody, so I'm going up to this F6 because now the F is in the melody, so. And then up to D half diminished. And here, of course, this is a place where you can harmonize that in many different ways. I believe that the D minor 6 is actually original, but you can just as easily turn it into like an A flat 7 if you want to. And this continues into a G7, where I'm adding sort of another, not really a line cliche, but just sort of a very common harmonic movement. So first, like a G713, because it's the 5/5, that's sort of the color you expect. And then you have this movement, which actually returns in the second half, just in a different way. Up to G minor 7. And here, of course, because I have the high D up here, and that's just sort of staying, and I'm playing it with my 4th finger, and that means that like the rest is free to move around, so. And then of course to F, and here I need to play this melody note, so I'm making that a drop 2 and 4 voicing, which is like a very open voicing. But also I think it's a really nice color on this note here. And then to C minor. And again, like long note in the melody means bass movement. And then we get the 4th degree, so B flat major 7. And here really just playing the, and then just adding the chord in around that. So the melody really gets room to be clear and also be articulated, and then I'm just adding the harmony around that. I think that's sort of the easiest way to get the whole thing to work, at least for me, because very often the melody can get sort of hidden a little bit in the harmony, and that I find that too often be kind of a pity. So again, you have here, going back to the F, which is actually not that common for this kind of type of form, because of course it's like split in 2 halves, so it's like what you would call A, B, A, C. But here actually it doesn't, in this spot you would kind of expect it to go to like a D minor 7, G7, and then G minor 7, C7. But here it's more like a turnaround, so like a 1, 6, 2, 5. So first the 1 chord, and then up here, and then you could go straight to a D7 here, but I went to an A half diminished. And then again we have a long note, and then down to the 5/5. And again also sort of this combination of the long D is the melody, and then just adding chords and bass movement around that. And then we get the second half. And in the second half you'll find that I'm doing pretty much the same thing that I'm doing in the first half, with just some slight variations. So the first part is pretty much identical actually. But then here on the, on the E flat, now I'm choosing a different color on it. So instead of going to the A half diminished D7, I'm going to A flat minor, which is I think sort of famously the real book version that does that. And then I'm coloring that like this, which is just a different take on the line cliche really. I mean, the only sort of function of this is just to have some movement, and then also have the melody and the color of the chord in there at the same time. And then the G minor is exactly the same as the last time, except I have a chord stab in there as well. C7, which is also essentially the same. And then also a very similar take on the F6. And then on the G7 here, so where like last time I sort of had complete voicings under it, now it's sort of turned into almost a fill. So I'm playing the melody, and then just adding that chromatic movement as an inner voice movement where nothing else is happening. And then the G minor 7, C7. And now it goes straight to C minor. So the way I'm doing that is because the melody is actually all the way up here, but I'm first just stating the harmony like this, because that's more full, and actually it will also voice lead a little bit better into the F7. So it kind of connects, and then the other voicing that I'm moving up to take works more like a fill, and still will, like when I go to the F7, it's still gonna make sense. So you get, and then I'm going to this F7. So you can see how this and this, so the C minor and F7 just work together a lot better, and then that would have been a little bit difficult up here. Not that it's super important to do that, but it's sort of a more smooth way of doing that, that you're kind of, it's like you're pretending that you kind of play the harmony on a piano like down here, and then you can move up and play something that's even if it's harmonized, it's still sort of is just existing on top of the other harmony, and then you can go back to the other part. I think that's kind of the effect you get from it. So and here also not really, like the melody is different, but essentially it's still just the 4/4 minor, so B flat major, and then to the A over the E flat 7, which I'm sort of just putting in here, and then adding the chord. Again, I want to play the melody first, that's the most important part, and then add the harmony. And then you get this part, which is a lot of moving around, but actually like this, it's quite playable. So that's of course just sort of a trick to get that to work. So the first part of the F, you would kind of want to have it down here with, at least it would be nicer if you can go, because that's also a little bit what the intro is kind of hinting at. But with the melody being C, then that's not really practical. So down to this, and then G minor, A minor, which is actually kind of like an F major with F in the bass, because with A in the bass, because the F comes in the melody. G minor again. And then in the final turnaround of the theme, then I'm going to an A7. This is really just because I could go to A minor, but we have A in the melody, and it's nice to really emphasize the movement here. So A7, and then this high F, which I'm then harmonizing. I guess originally this is probably a D minor chord, but I'm turning it into a D7 because it's just kind of asks for that. Again, also with this idea of having these dominants in there that sort of move the song forward. And I think that really fits with this place. like this. And then down to G minor, and then C7. Again, first the melody and then the chord. And then we get this short turnaround, which is like a hit the road jack thing. So F6 to E flat 7 to D flat 7 with a sharp 11 or a flat 5, depending on how you want to see it. And then a C7 sus 4. And then here from this I can go back into the original intro that I made. And that's also just because I don't want to go directly to that, because I want to just give the melody a chance to really end like this. And then I can go back to sort of the vamp-like mood of, you know, moving up and down the chords, which is just sort of making the ending last a little bit longer, adding some groove to it, and just reminding us of sort of what the feel I was setting up in the beginning was. And then finally ending with a slight ritardando on this voicing, which is of course like an F major 7 with a 9 and no third. So just sort of a nice, open, beautiful sound. And then I'm adding this short fill, which is sort of using harmonics to play, I guess it's a jingle for a British television company called, what's that called? I'm not even sure what it's called anymore, but it used to be on TV all the time when I was a kid. So that's just playing like the notes of the chord and then adding up to the F and then down the chord again. It's pretty simple. It's a nice thing to be able to do, just because you have this low voicing here, and then that works. So that's the arrangement. If you have any questions about this, then of course feel free to ask. And also if you have any suggestions for songs I should take on in the future, if there's stuff you want to see. For the rest, thank you for your support, and until next month.